Hello, I'm Waqar Rizvi, and this is Scope. The Saudi Crown Prince is to visit Pakistan. He's bringing with him a large delegation of businessmen. On the agenda are lucrative investment deals and memoranda of understanding covering various fields. The two countries' relationship has been a mutually beneficial one over the years. From defense to religious sentiments and others, there is much to this strategic partnership. To discuss that a bit further, we're joined now by Mr. Shahzad Chaudhry, who is a defense analyst, joining us from Islamabad. He's a former Air Vice Marshal and Ambassador. Mr. Chaudhry, thanks for joining us here in the Scope. What do you make of the Crown Prince's visit? How important is it in your opinion?
I think it's important enough to underline the importance, as you mentioned, between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia's relationship over the decades. And the intensity and the depth of which, of course, you correctly reflected in terms of religious sentiment, as well as the fact that the fraternity that exists between the people of the two countries goes into the foundation of this relationship. We've got to keep in mind at the state-to-state level that Pakistan has contributed tremendously to Saudi Arabia's military capability over the years. In fact, was instrumental in making that happen in 60s and 70s to enable it to bring about an army or have a standing army which has the capacity, and the Air Force for that matter, which should have the capacity and ability to take care of its defense. So Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. In return, Saudi Arabia has been always of great support and help, especially in Pakistan's financial crunch, periods of financial crunch, and that is when they've come forward and helped Pakistan with support, whatever was possible. So that's the history. This particular moment of his coming to Pakistan actually reinforces that commitment that the two nations have with each other. There was a slight down during the years of the Pakistan People's Party between 2008 to 2013, when I think in terms of the comfort of relationship that should have existed between the two top leaderships probably was a bit missing. And that was perhaps the slight downside of it. And then another one, when Pakistan under Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and its parliament decided that it will not become a party to the Yemen war. So beyond that, and having gone through that little small episodes of a bit of a cooling off of the relationship, although it never can cool off because of the depth of this relationship. So I think it underlines the fact that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia continue to be fraternally strong relation, that the leadership is bound in a similar sort of a relationship with each other, and that the two nations are likely to go on getting into a stronger bond of what had been only defensive into a more economic arrangement. Also, please keep in mind that the Saudi Crown Prince's visit indicates that Saudi Arabia itself is changing from within. And when I say that, it really means that it is looking beyond oil alone, and it is looking at possibilities of greater economic cooperation, what minerals and agriculture.
And if you allow me, Mr. Chaudhry, I want to pick up on that mention of you talking about a greater economic cooperation, because that certainly does seem to be, the Crown Prince's status quo about the way that he functions, especially in his very important position, of course. I'd like to add another voice to this conversation. We're joined now by Dr. Salman Shah, who is a former Minister of Finance, and he's joining us right here from in Lahore on the line. Dr. Shah, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on here in the Scope. Dr. Shah, what do you make of the Saudi Crown Prince's visit to Pakistan? What does this mean for Pakistan? What does it mean for Saudi Arabia? What does it mean for investment deals, etc.?
I think this is a very important meeting, and it is going to lay the foundation of great economic relationship between the two countries. And also, when we consider that Pakistan is building the CPEC, and in CPEC there is a very big component of oil and gas and the mineral sides of things. And Saudi Arabia, of course, is the world's largest oil producer and a very major economy just across the Arabian Sea from Pakistan. So from perspective of even Gawada, Saudi Arabia is a prime partner for that. And moreover, I think the prince is very young, and he has shown that he is really looking to transform Saudi Arabia economically. He has given rights to women rights in Saudi Arabia. He's liberalizing the economy. He has changed the governance structure in Saudi Arabia. He's trying to put Aramco, the biggest oil company in the world. He wants to list it and maybe create a market for Saudi Arabian assets. And so I think Saudi Arabia is going to be modernizing quite a bit economically, and for Pakistan to be a partner in that modernization and Pakistan's own development effort. I think this relationship has lots and lots of potential for Pakistan and for Saudi Arabia.
Indeed, and Mr. Chaudhry, that's what I wanted to hone in on, because this is a mutually beneficial relationship, isn't it? We can talk about defense ties over the years, the many drills that have been held between the two countries. We can talk about, how Pakistan has helped train Saudis of different, mind you, fields within defense, etc. How important has that been, do you think?
Like I said, I mean, look, it's a transition point in the Saudi history also. Saudi Arabia is wanting to change itself from a point of view of a single commodity producing nation to a more widely dispersed economy. And in that, this young crown prince is looking for avenues to be able to do that. He knows the CPEC is in place, as Dr. Shah was saying, and he can build on it, become a partner, and then build on it to establish Saudi Arabia's own linkages with Central Asia, perhaps China, and as well as other nations in the region. Keep in mind a strategic competition also between Saudi Arabia and Iran, with a similar sort of a commodity-based economies. And in that, if Saudi Arabia can perhaps in due course replace some of what Iran does, although it doesn't produce too much of oil, it produces a lot more gas. So in that sense, if energy can be something that he can build on and develop his own footprint in the region, as well as develop, widen his own, diversify his own economic base with relationship to other countries, and on an avenue which exists, is what is his new direction. As far as the defense is concerned, obviously, Saudi Arabia now stands at the point where it is possibly one of the leading military forces in the region, in the Middle East. And so therefore, in terms of ability, in terms of its capacity, it has all of that. Pakistan can share it with it through our own association in terms of training them more on counter insurgencies and counter terrorism areas. So I think all in all, the young prince is looking to really change Saudi Arabia from within. And that's a good thing for the region and for the relationship of Saudi Arabia with many other countries, especially Pakistan.
Dr. Shah, whenever we talk about this relationship, it's also important, isn't it, to talk about, as we have so far, talk about how much Pakistan has also contributed to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia vis-a-vis not just labor, of course, but we've had, contributions vis-a-vis our doctors, our engineers, etc., who have contributed quite significantly to building up Saudi Arabia to where it is today and going forward in the future. How important an aspect is that to this relationship, do you think?
I think from Pakistan perspective, it's very, very important because Pakistan is a very large country in terms of population. We are the fifth or sixth largest country. We have a very young population. Almost 60% of our population is under the age of 25. And this youth bulge will continue for the next 30 years. And clearly, the opportunities for employment and opportunities for even migration are going to be very important aspects of Pakistan's economic growth in the future. So on the one hand, Pakistan has to become a factory of the world so that these people who are now migrating in very big numbers from the rural areas to the urban areas and the urban economy So Saudi Arabia can really invest in the urban economy. And because Saudi Arabia has a surplus of capital and it has a smaller population, and this way it can invest in the manufacturing processes, which hopefully will be global in nature in Pakistan. Depending on the special economic zones which we are establishing, I foresee that Saudi Arabia should be a very major investor in these special economic zones. And as Pakistani skills become better, more and more Pakistanis will also be going to Saudi Arabia to perform services over there, professional services in the health area, education, in development, engineering, design. So Pakistan and Saudi Arabian economies will be intertwined. And I think that would be a very, very important strategic objective from Pakistan's point of view, and also from the Saudi point of view. The fact that we have a very good relationship which has been there for such a long time, I think now it has to be really strengthened with very, very strong economic links.
Very well. I'll give the final word to Mr. Chaudhry before we go to break. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chaudhry, I wanted to then get your thoughts, if I may, about this manpower that Pakistan has been able to provide Saudi Arabia, helping it in the fields of construction, as I said as well, medicine and others.
That obviously also has been an element of support to the Pakistani economy. Keep in mind the fact that many of our professionals, as you mentioned in your statement, have been part of the process society and how they've helped develop systems there, whether banking comes to mind, medical and hospitals comes to mind, and so much more. So I think that's an area other than defense where Pakistanis have contributed significantly and therefore have helped. There've been, like I said, there've been downsides to it for a while, but always we've recovered it well out of those downs, and we've always found a way up again into burgeoning our relationship and strengthening our relationship. So I hope that this particular thing will also move on into a more wider areas of relationship, and the bilateralism will actually be deepened to a point that the two nations can benefit again and again from each other.
Very well. We're just going to go to a very short break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll, of course, continue this conversation about the Saudi Crown Prince's visit to Pakistan, as well as its significance and what this means for both countries. Stay with us for that. Thank you for staying with us, ladies and gentlemen, here in The Scope as we continue to discuss the relationship between Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, of course, in context of the trip of the Saudi Crown Prince to Pakistan. To discuss this a bit further, we're now joined by Mr. Khurshiad M Kasuri, who is a former foreign minister of Pakistan, and he's joining us from right here on the line from Lahore. Mr. Kasuri, thanks you for your time and for taking your time out to speak to us here in The Scope. Mr. Kasuri, what do you make of the importance of the Saudi Crown Prince's trip to Pakistan at this time?
Well, it's a trip at the highest level after quite a few years, and there are a few reasons why this has happened. Particularly, there was a lot of misunderstanding between the two countries after our decision on the war in Yemen. I think our decision was 100% correct. We should not have sent our troops to Yemen in a war or a proxy war with Iran. So following that, I think it's no secret that the relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the Gulf countries generally is not simply at a diplomatic level, it's also at a security level. Yes. Pakistan has helped train the security forces and the air forces and navy in many of these countries. And in the case of Saudi Arabia, we've had our troops stationed there for a long time. In fact, we used to have a brigade in Tabuk. And although at the time of the Yemen war, we made clear that we would not be part of any war against Yemen, nevertheless, I think Pakistan did allow its troops, some more troops to join those who were already there for the internal security of Saudi Arabia. its support.
So if you allow me, Mr. Kasuri, I wanted to pick up on your mention of the international standing of both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, respectively, individually, of course. But do you think that it's been an important relationship internationally as well, in the sense that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have stood up for each other at places like the United Nations? Of course, in the OIC, we know that there is cooperation between the two nations as well. When it came even to the FATF issue, the Financial Action Task Force issue, we know that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia stood by Pakistan through that process. How important has that relationship in that sense also been an international forum?
No, not only international forum. There's absolutely no doubt that Saudi Arabia has stood by Pakistan in cases of much graver emergencies. For example, when we detonated our nuclear devices after India had detonated its, and there were sanctions on Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia helped in every conceivable way by supplying oil. In some cases free, I don't know what the truth is, or on credit. But whatever it was a great help to Pakistan. And also, when I was foreign minister, when there was the earthquake in Kashmir and northern areas, Saudi Arabia and United States were the two countries which made the greatest, not only donations, but showed the greatest support in many other ways. So there's no doubt. Not only on the FATF, we've been cooperating on Kashmir. For example, the closest supporters of Pakistan, whenever any UNGA meetings or any meeting of the OIC is held on the sidelines of the UNGA meeting, Saudi Arabia and Turkey are absolutely key to Pakistan in those meetings, and invariably a positive resolution is passed at those sideline meetings. So it's not just FATF.
Right.
Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have stood by each other.
Indeed. And then I also wanted to then ask Mr. Kasuri about, obviously this has always been a mutually beneficial relationship, as in Pakistan has also contributed through manpower and other such sectors, of course, to the Saudis. How do you see that part?
More to Pakistan.
Yes.
Because labor is available from many other countries.
Yes.
So I wouldn't say that we've done them a great favor.
Okay.
It's a mutual favor.
Right.
But where we have helped them is in internal security. And that is a very, Pakistan has stood by Saudi Arabia. It's the only country with nuclear weapons in the Islamic world, which gives us a certain standing regarding this. So, I mean, there are areas which help both countries where their interests converge. But not forget that the most important area is the withdrawal of United States, or at least a declaration of withdrawal by the United States, or at least a belief in the international community. The United States is going into isolation. Whether it proves to be entirely correct in the long run, we'll see. But it has created uncertainty, not just in the Middle East and among its allies in the Middle East, but also in NATO. So in view of that, Saudi Arabia feels it can no longer depend on the United States, and Pakistan plays a very important role there.
Just before I let you go, Mr. Kasuri, because I know you have a busy schedule, so as a final question, I wanted to ask you then, of course, about the economic aspect to this trip, because that's been spoken of a lot in the lead up to the Crown Prince's arrival here in Pakistan. There's talk of investment in the Gwadar port. There's talk of an investors conference to happen after the fact, even because he is bringing quite a large delegation, at least 25 businessmen from what we've understood, but that number may be significantly higher, of course. What do you make of the importance of such investment for Pakistan?
Well, I mean, if the investment actually materializes, absolutely, it's great help to Pakistan, because it's one thing to get loans which you have to repay with interest, and that applies to Saudi and UAE and Chinese loans also, which have helped our foreign exchange reserves. But when you have investment, there is no such liability. So investment is an entirely different thing, and I hope it does materialize. It's one thing signing MOUs, it's quite another to actually materialize those MOUs. But what gives me confidence this time is not just what the Pakistanis are saying. I've been following the Saudi media also.
Right.
And their spokesman. They also seem to be saying that Saudi Arabia has taken a strategic decision to invest in Pakistan. Now, the good thing about this is that it's not going to be just signing of MOUs. We understand that the two governments have agreed to have committees of 5 or 6 ministers each dealing with different subjects. And therefore, what you need is a follow-up action. As former foreign minister, I know that there are lots of turf wars, and that is one of the great curses in Pakistan's implementation of MOUs. And these turf wars can be avoided only if the Prime Minister himself heads that committee, which in this case we are told will be happening. The Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia will both chair those meetings. Now that is very good. That makes me feel that whatever the MOUs are announced during the visit, there's a good chance that a large part of that may actually materialize.
Okay. Mr. Kasuri, he's a former foreign minister of Pakistan. He was speaking to us on the line there from right here in Lahore. Let me add another voice to this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by Professor Zamir Ahmad Awan, who is a professor at the National University of Sciences and Technology, NUST. He's speaking to us from Islamabad. He's a political analyst. Professor Awan, thanks for joining us here in The Scope as always. Professor, what do you make of the importance of the Saudi Crown Prince's visit to Pakistan at this time?
Yes, it is a very, very important visit. Last 30 years, after 30 years, a very, very important high-level royal family's visit, and especially Prince Mohammed bin Salman is a very important figure in Saudi Arabia. He is a young man, he is a dynamic person, he loves his country, and he understands the nature of his responsibilities, especially under the changing environment and geopolitical scenario of the region. This visit is a very, very important.
All right, so Professor Awan, what are you looking for when it comes to this trip? There's been a lot of talk, of course, of investments. Is that, do you think, the main scope of this trip?
In fact, this visit carries a lot of significance in many aspects. First of all, the political aspects, and then, as you are asking about the investment and the economic aspects. Let me tell you, Pakistan is a hub of future investment. Gwadar port is being developed, and Gwadar will be the apex center of all commercial activities in this region. Gwadar will be the largest deep sea port in this whole region, and it will be very important commercial center. The investment coming from Saudi Arabia is mostly on building oil city or refinery in the Gwadar city. That will be around $10 billion US. And also, in addition to that $10 billion, we are going to have 8 MOU signed and various sectors investment, especially in the energy sector, including renewable energy. I think that this visit carries a lot of economic prosperity message for Pakistan.
And Professor, if you can, Professor, tell us about, this relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and how it's been mutually beneficial for both sides. Because, Pakistan has also contributed, has it not, to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are the partners. We are mutually helping each other. Saudi Arabia is contributing to Pakistan, and Pakistan is contributing for Saudi Arabia. We are major political partners. We enjoy harmony in all aspects, especially on the regional issues and the international issues. Pakistan is always extending its support to Saudi cause, and we always stand with the Saudi Arabia on all major issues. In addition to that one, we are the major source of human resource or the workforce for Saudi Arabia. In many other ways, politically, economically, and technically, we are contributing for the development of Saudi Arabia.
Okay, viewers, we're just going to go into a very short break. We're going to, of course, continue this conversation about the relationship between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan going forward, of course, and in context of the Saudi Crown Prince's visit to Pakistan. Stay with us for that. Thank you very much for staying with us here in the Scope, viewers, as we continue to discuss the relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and of course, in context of this visit of the Saudi Crown Prince and his delegation to Pakistan. We're going to add another voice to this conversation. We're now joined by Mr. Haroon Sharif, who is the Minister of State and Chairman of the Pakistan Board of Investment. He's joining us on the line now from the Pakistani capital, Islamabad. Mr. Sharif, we appreciate your time and for speaking to us here in the Scope. For you, Mr. Sharif, what is the most significant part of this trip of the Saudi Crown Prince to Pakistan? Would it be fair to say that Pakistan is looking forward to the investment deals that will be signed?
Well, thank you very much for your call. As you have mentioned, this trip is extremely significant for both the countries. And one of the major shifts which we are seeing in our long-standing relationship is that Saudi investors are taking a long-term position in Pakistan in very strategic and important investment projects. For instance, we will be signing 3 major MOUs. One is for oil refinery and possibly a petrochemical complex. Second will be in energy sector with a focus on alternate energy, and then mining and mineral development. So these MOUs, what they actually signify is that, the Saudi investors are confident that Pakistan's economic stability in the future is something they would like to leverage on.
And why now? I guess many people may ask, Mr. Sharif, what has changed that these investors are now interested in Pakistan at this point in time? Is it that the atmosphere is now more conducive for foreign investments, such as that from Saudi Arabia and others? And what makes Pakistan such an attractive destination for investors?
That's a very good question. So what has happened now is that, first of all, the security perception of Pakistan has improved tremendously. Secondly, Pakistan's leadership, particularly Prime Minister Imran Khan, if you look at his pitch to the world, that this is the time to invest in Pakistan, don't miss the opportunity. What it says is that we are very clearly moving from the lens of, the way world was looking at Pakistan with the lens of a conflict-linked region to a region which is basically Pakistan moving towards economic growth and shared prosperity. So that's number 2. Third are very specific incentives our Board of Investment is working. There are sector-based incentives. We have priority sectors identified. There are tax incentives. There are facilitation incentives. So that all makes the package a lot more attractive to investors. One of the things which is also significant is that over the past 5 years, there has been tremendous investment through CPEC and otherwise in improving infrastructure, regional connectivity, power sector projects. So these were certain infrastructural deficiencies which Pakistan has overcome, and now it's the time for regional investors to leverage that infrastructure, because if they come to Pakistan, they're not only looking for our, large consumer market, but they can also in future reach out to Western China and, Euro-Asia in the coming years.
And, I wanted to look, if we may, over the years of this relationship between the kingdom and Pakistan. This has been a mutually beneficial relationship, has it not? In regards to, of course, Pakistani manpower, Pakistani knowledge, of course, being used in various industries, be it defense, be it medicine, even engineering, etc. What can you tell us about that?
In terms of our relationship to Saudi Arabia, is that the question?
Yes, it being a two-way relationship where Pakistan has also helped contribute significantly to the kingdom.
Pakistan and traditionally has been contributing, through our, skilled labor force, which has played a very significant part in Saudi Arabia. We are one of the largest, importers of crude oil from Saudi Arabia. Also, we have, foreign policy and strategic ties with Saudi Arabia. The good part, what I see at this point in time, is that the historic relationship, which is based on these things, is now being upgraded to a long-term investment partnership. And that is significant, which will not only bring in foreign direct investment, it will transfer technology to Pakistan. And also when our productivity goes up, so it does not only help in our global competitiveness, but they will also import back the produce. So our exports are likely to go up as a result of. But I would also like to mention that these investments, take some time because these are capital-based projects. And so we are expecting, between the time frame of 2 to 5 years, they will start materializing.
And if we may for a moment talk about the political aspects here and the diplomatic aspects between the two countries. In international fora, we of course know that both countries have supported each other in places like the United Nations, of course, cooperation through the OIC. The Saudis have stood by Pakistan when it comes to the Kashmir issue. How important has all of that been for this relationship?
Well, I might not be the right person to answer that. It's more of a foreign policy question.
Yes.
All I can say is that I do see convergence of views emerging between the two countries towards, larger stability in the region, where Saudis have now the tool for that is economic diplomacy, which is actually a very welcome step because that will have a clear impact in the lives of the people in the region.
Okay, and then I wanted to ask if we may go back to the economy, because we know that the Crown Prince, has spoken about, of course, reforms and, of course, an economic drive within the kingdom as well to reform the way the kingdom operates vis-a-vis its economy. Do you think that is also playing a large part about why he is looking to a country like Pakistan as an attractive place to invest, considering that meets his own strategic economic goals for his country?
That's correct, because there is a Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, which clearly, identifies priority markets in the region, and Pakistan has become one of the priority countries in their, vision to diversify their investments in the region. Having said that, having a position in Pakistan at this stage will give them, as I mentioned before, a good footprint to reach out to the other countries in future. So Saudi Arabia, sovereign wealth funds are looking at now the emerging markets which, offer a larger promise. The two factors which are critical between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia in this whole relationship is the emphasis on transparency of contracts, because transparency has been emphasized by Prime Minister Imran Khan and also by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Second is that Pakistan is, expressing commitment that all these investments will be facilitated in an efficient and timely manner, and that's where Board of Investment comes in. So we are giving an institutional response to these investments to facilitate the projects which will be done in future.
All right, I wanted to go to our other guest now, who's also been patiently sitting by, waiting for us to call on him, Professor Zamir Ahmad Awan. Professor, of course, we appreciate your patience. Professor Awan, I wanted to ask you about what you make of the vision that the Crown Prince has for his own country and how investments in Pakistan, fit into that, and what that then means for the strengthening of bilateral ties between the two countries.
Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, both countries are facing challenges. The nature of challenges is different for each country. For example, Pakistan was sufferer of the war or situation in Afghanistan for the last 4 decades. Our economic crises are very deepened, and we are facing the economic challenges, while Saudi Arabia is also facing some challenges, but their nature of challenges is different. They are in the form of transformation, opening more, they are political and the social challenges. Both countries understand each other very well. Saudi Arabia, before this visit, has held a cabinet meeting, and during the cabinet meeting, they have discussed in depth the needs of Pakistan and mode of cooperation. In Pakistan, before the arrival of the Crown Prince, Pakistani Prime Minister called a cabinet meeting and discussed in details and all aspects of the cooperation. So both sides understand each other very well, and we are committed to help each other. We are complementing each other. The areas where Saudi Arabia is lacking, Pakistan will help them. The areas where Pakistan is lacking, Saudi Arabia is helping Pakistan. In this visit, it is obviously visible the investment is coming to Pakistan, and it will contribute to the Pakistan's socio-economic development. And especially what I would like to emphasize, the leadership in Pakistan has the vision. The vision is a long-term vision. Similarly, the Crown Prince is a young man. He has vision for the long future. So this time the investment is the long-term plans. So this investment in Pakistan will have an impact on the many years to come. I believe this is a different visit. It is a more significant visit, and the relation are the long-term relationship.
Okay, I'll give you the final word then, Professor Awan, as well. What are your final thoughts about this trip? What are you looking for in the coming days and, of course, beyond this trip of the Crown Prince?
Coming days, of course, definitely Pakistani government is very well prepared. All the plans are finalized. We will make Crown Prince visit safe, secure, and fruitful. It will be a very comfortable visit for him. Definitely, this is our responsibility, and we are very well prepared for it.
Okay, I'm being told that we still have Mr. Haroon Sharif with us. Mr. Sharif, I wanted to get the final word before I let you go about what you are looking for then in the coming days. Of course, we've spoken in detail about the investments and the fact that from what we've understood, and of course you can confirm this for us, that there will be an investors conference as well to follow this trip of the Crown Prince. What are you looking for to happen in the near term right after this trip?
Well, two things. First of all, obviously when we sign the MOUs, the real challenge is that how do we ensure timely implementation. So the both heads of state, like Prime Minister of Pakistan and the Crown Prince, they will be chairing a high-level Supreme Coordination Council, which will actually oversee the implementation of these MOUs. So that's one institutional step. Second step which Board of Investment is working on is a series of investor forums. So about 30 investors are coming with the Crown Prince, so we'll be hosting them on 18th with their counterparts and business-to-business meetings and giving them information how to do business in Pakistan. And this will be followed by two more conferences, one in Pakistan and one in Saudi Arabia. So the good part which I would like to give the message is that, our message that Pakistan is open for business and reforms are being put in place. You have already seen the relaxation of the visa regime. We do look forward to regional investors, our neighbors, come to Pakistan and invest here so that we can facilitate. And we would ensure a long-term engagement with them so that, majority of these projects are matured on time.
Very well. We'll leave there as our final word, but of course we appreciate all of your insight and analysis, and of course for taking your time out to speak to us here in The Scope. I'd like to thank all of our guests. That was Mr. Haroon Sharif, Minister of State and Chairman of the Pakistan Board of Investment. We were also joined earlier by Mr. Khurshiad M Kasuri, who is a former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. We were joined by Professor Zamir Ahmad Awan, political analyst and professor at NAST. Earlier in the program, we were joined by Dr. Salman Shah, former Finance Minister of Pakistan. And we were also joined by Mr. Shahzad Chaudhry, former Air Vice Marshal and Ambassador. He's a defense analyst as well. Now, viewers, as all of our guests and experts spoke about throughout this show, the relationship between Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is an important one, is a strategic one. And this time around, it seems that things have changed in that the Saudis now see Pakistan as an attractive investment destination. And many people saying, of course, that is an important shift in this relationship as well at this time. You heard there from Mr. Sharif, of course, details about what we will be expecting in the coming days vis-a-vis MOUs and investor meetings with Pakistani investors versus Saudi investors on the other side. We'll wait and see, of course, how this relationship develops going forward and what all this investment means for Pakistan as well as Saudi Arabia in this continuing mutually beneficial relationship. I've been Waqar Rizvi, and this has been Scope.